Chapter 1, 2:41 p.m. The office always sounded the same at that hour. A low electrical hum from fluorescent lights. The soft percussion of keyboards. Someone laughing 2 cubicles over at a joke that had already overstayed its welcome. The printer near reception coughing out a stack of contracts. My screen glowed with a spreadsheet I had been refining since morning, rows of numbers aligned neatly, predictable, obedient. Predictable was good. At 2:38 p.m., my calendar reminder blinked in the corner. Vendor review, 3 o'clock p.m. At 2:39 p.m., I took a sip of coffee that had already gone cold. At 2:40 p.m., I adjusted a formula and watched the totals correct themselves. Then my phone vibrated against the desk. Once, twice. I didn't look at it immediately. She rarely called during work hours unless something was broken or delayed or inconvenient. Groceries. Internet outage. A package that hadn't arrived. It vibrated again. I flip it over. Her name filled the screen. For half a second, I considered letting it ring out and calling back after the meeting. But something about the persistence, 3 vibrations in less than 10 seconds, made me swipe to answer. "Hey," I said, neutral. She cut me off. I inherited millions. There was no greeting, no preface, no build-up. Just that. I leaned back in my chair slightly, staring at the spreadsheet, but no longer seeing it. "What?" I asked, not because I hadn't heard her, but because the statement felt misplaced in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon. "You heard me." Her voice was breathy, elevated, sharp around the edges. "It's finalized. It cleared. It's mine. Cleared. Finalized." Words chosen carefully, or maybe impulsively. "That's unexpected," I said. "From who?" "It doesn't matter from who," she snapped, then laughed, a quick, bright, triumphant sound. "What matters is that everything just changed. Everything." Around me, the office continued moving. Someone rolled a chair across carpet. A Slack notification chimed. Life remained ordinary. On my phone, her breathing quickened like she'd been pacing. "Pack your things," she said. There was a pause, small, deliberate. "Get out of the apartment." The words didn't explode. They landed. Flat. Clean. Final. I glanced at the corner of my monitor. 2:41 p.m. "Say that again," I said calmly. "You don't live here anymore," she replied. No hesitation. No tremor. "I don't need you here. I don't need this. I don't need any of it." There it was. The subtext rising. "This is happening fast," I said. "It's happening exactly when it's supposed to." She sounded almost amused now. "I've been stuck for years. Now I'm not. Stuck. Years." I let the silence stretch just long enough to measure her breathing. It wasn't shaky. It wasn't sad. It was excited. "You've already decided?" I asked. "I've already moved on," she said. "The papers are on the table. Just sign them. Don't make this messy." The papers. Prepared. Staged. I swiveled my chair slightly away from the open floor, lowering my voice. "You had divorce papers ready before calling me?" "I knew this day would come," she said smoothly. "I just didn't know it would come with this much money." There was pride in her tone. A lift, like she had just crossed an invisible finish line. "You don't belong here anymore," she added. "This isn't your level." Level. I let that word settle between us. Across the aisle, Daniel from accounting stood up and stretched, oblivious to the small detonation occurring inside my phone. "All right," I said. That seemed to surprise her. "All right," she echoed. "I'll come by after work." "No," she said quickly. "Come now. I don't want you there tonight." I checked the time again. 2:42 p.m. "I have obligations," I said evenly. "I'll handle them." "You're unbelievable," she scoffed. "You're still acting like this is normal." "It is normal," I replied. "For now." She exhaled sharply. "Just don't cause problems. Sign the papers. Pack your stuff. And go." "Okay," I said. There was a beat of silence. Maybe she expected an argument. A plea. Anger. Instead, she filled it herself. "You should have seen the lawyer's face," she continued, almost giddy. "The numbers. You have no idea what this means." "I'm sure you'll explain it," I said. "I don't owe you explanations anymore." Another silence. Then, softer but colder. "This is my life now." "Understood." She hesitated. "You're not even going to ask how much." "No," That unsettled her more than outrage would have. "It's more than you'll ever make," she said. "I hope it's enough," I replied. "For what?" she demanded. "For what comes with it." She didn't answer that. "Be out by tonight," she said finally. The line went dead. I kept the phone against my ear for 2 seconds after the disconnect tone, listening to nothing. Then I lowered it slowly. Around me, nothing had changed. 2:42 p.m. I placed the phone face down on my desk. Opened a blank notes document. Title: 2:41 p.m. Phone call. I typed quickly. 2:41 p.m. Incoming call. Statement: I inherited millions. Instruction: pack your things. Get out of the apartment. Divorce papers prepared prior to notice. I paused. Added. Tone elevated. Confident. No discussion. No mutual agreement. I hit save. Then I opened the call log. Screenshot. Saved image. Uploaded to cloud storage. Forwarded to my personal email. Attached the screenshot. Subject line: 2:41 p.m. Call record. Sent. My breathing had not changed. My pulse had not accelerated. I checked my calendar again. Vendor review. 3:00 p.m. I stood up, walked to the restroom, and splashed water on my wrists. Not my face. My wrists. Cold water grounds faster. In the mirror, I looked exactly the same. No visible rupture. Back at my desk, Daniel leaned over the divider. "You good for 3?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "You look focused." "I am." He nodded, satisfied, and disappeared. I sat down again and reopened the spreadsheet. Adjusted a column width. Fixed a misaligned cell. The numbers obeyed. At 2:47 p.m., my phone buzzed again. A text: "You better not make this difficult." I didn't respond. Instead, I took another screenshot. Saved. Uploaded. Forwarded. Documentation creates gravity. At 2:51 p.m., another message. "This is happening whether you like it or not." Screenshot. Save. Upload. Forward. My fingers moved steadily. No shaking. At 2:55 p.m., I closed all unrelated tabs. Opened a new browser window. Searched one phrase. Probate finalization timeline. I didn't dive in yet. Just scanned. Close the tab. Process doesn't begin with reaction. It begins with sequence. At 2:59 p.m., I stood up for the meeting. As I walked toward the conference room, my phone rested in my pocket, silent for the moment. Somewhere across town, she was probably pacing the apartment, looking at the papers she had arranged. Imagining the scene when I walked in. Imagining tears, or shouting, or pleading. I pushed open the conference room door at exactly 3:00 p.m. "Sorry," I said evenly. "Ready." The vendor began speaking. I listened, took notes, asked questions, signed off on adjustments. At 3:37 p.m., the meeting ended. I returned to my desk, opened the notes document again, added one final line. No emotional response provided. No escalation initiated. I reread the title. 2:41 p.m. Phone call. Closed the document. Locked the screen. Sat still for a moment. Process first. Emotion later. Chapter 2. The stage is set. The drive home felt shorter than usual. Not because traffic had cleared, it hadn't, but because my mind wasn't wandering. No radio. No scrolling at red lights. No second-guessing the conversation. Just sequence. Signal. Brake. Turn. At 5:52 p.m., I pulled into the parking structure beneath our building. I remained seated for a moment after killing the engine, watching the digital clock on the dashboard tick forward. 5:53 p.m. I picked up my phone. Opened a notes file from earlier. 2:41 p.m. Phone call. Read it once. Locked the screen. Stepped out of the car. The elevator ride up was quiet. A couple stood in the corner whispering about dinner plans. A grocery bag brushed against my leg. Someone's cologne hung too heavy in the air. Normal life, stacked floor by floor. When the elevator doors opened on our level, I walked down the hallway at an even pace. Not fast, not hesitant. Our door stood at the end, slightly ajar. Unlocked. That was deliberate. I didn't touch the handle immediately. Instead, I took a step back and pulled out my phone. Camera. Wide frame. Photograph of the door, as found. Another, closer, showing the latch not fully engaged. I stepped forward and pushed it open gently with 2 fingers. The apartment lights were on. Not just on bright. Every overhead fixture illuminated. The living room lamps lit. Even a small accent light near the bookshelf glowing unnecessarily. Staged. I entered slowly and closed the door behind me without locking it. The first thing I saw was the dining table. Centered in the middle, perfectly aligned with the grain of the wood, sat a stack of papers. White. Crisp. A single black pen placed diagonally across the top page, angled toward the chair at the head of the table, my chair. She stood near the kitchen island, arms folded, leaning back slightly like she was hosting an open house. "You're late," she said. "It's 5:58, I replied evenly. "You should have come immediately. I said I'd come after work." Her eyes moved over me like she was assessing whether I understood what had happened to my status. I didn't speak again. I walked toward the table. Photograph. Full table. Another, closer on the papers. Another, close enough to capture the absence of any official seal. I set my phone down and pulled the stack toward me. She exhaled sharply. "Are you seriously taking pictures?" "Yes." "Of what?" "Condition of presentation." She laughed, but there was irritation beneath it. "God, you're dramatic." I flipped the first page. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Typed cleanly. Names correct. Address correct. But no court filing stamp. No case number. No attorney letterhead. No clerk's signature. I flipped to the final page. Signature lines blank. No witness lines completed. No notarization. Intimidation theater. "You don't belong here anymore," she said. The sentence hovered in the room, heavy with rehearsed confidence. I looked up at her. "When were these drafted?" I asked. "Today." "By who?" "That doesn't matter." "It usually does." Her jaw tightened. "You're not going to interrogate me in my own apartment." "Our apartment," I corrected. She uncrossed her arms. "Not anymore." I returned my attention to the papers. Photograph, each page individually. She stepped closer. "Stop that. I'm documenting." "For what?" "You're leaving." "I am." "Then just sign them." "I'm reading them." "There's nothing to read," she snapped. "It's standard. There's always something to read." I pulled out a chair and sat down. Deliberately. Slowly. The wood legs scraped softly against the floor. She began pacing behind me. "You could at least show some emotion," she muttered. "Do you even understand what just happened?" "Yes." "Say it." "You inherited money." "Millions," she corrected. I nodded slightly. "That's what you said." She leaned forward, palms pressing into the table. "This changes everything." "It changes some things," I said, turning a page. "You're unbelievable." I read each clause carefully. Division of property. Spousal support waived. Immediate vacating of premises requested. Requested. Not ordered. I underlined that word in my mind. "You're not going to fight me?" she asked. "No." "You're not going to argue?" No, her breathing sharpened. This wasn't matching the script she had written in her head. "I don't need you anymore," she said. "That's clear. I don't have to tolerate mediocrity." I didn't respond. She moved around the table, so she was directly across from me. "Look at me when I'm talking to you." I did. Her face was flushed, not with sadness but adrenaline. "Victory without resistance feels incomplete." "I've outgrown this," she continued. "I've outgrown you." I held her gaze for a moment longer than necessary. Then I picked up the pen. Her shoulders straightened. There it is, she probably thought. The collapse. The surrender. Instead, I signed my name cleanly on the line provided. No hesitation. No flourish. Just ink. I slid the papers back across the table toward her. "Enjoy your luck," I said calmly. "Just don't confuse it with ownership." The words landed differently than they had earlier. Less abstract now. More grounded. Her expression flickered, just briefly. "What is that supposed to mean?" she demanded. "It means what it means." She grabbed the papers and stacked them quickly, like the moment had ended too soon. "That was easier than I expected," she said, trying to recover tone. "I prefer efficiency." I stood up, walked toward the bedroom. She followed. "You're really just going to pack and leave?" "Yes." "Just like that?" "Yes." Inside the bedroom, I pulled a small suitcase from the closet, set on the bed, opened drawers, selected essentials only, clothes for a few days, laptop, external hard drive, passport, important documents from the lockbox. She leaned against the doorframe watching. You don't want to know how much? She asked again. No, why not? Because the amount doesn't change the structure. She frowned. You talk like a robot. No, I said, zipping the suitcase. I talk like someone who listens. I did one final sweep of the room, left the framed photos, left the decorative things she had chosen, left the unnecessary. When I rolled the suitcase into the hallway, she stood near the door again. That's it? She asked. That's it. You're not going to come back for more? If needed, it'll be scheduled. Scheduled, she repeated mockingly. I reached for the door handle. She spoke once more, softer this time. You really don't belong here anymore. I opened the door, stepped into the hallway, turned back slightly. That's a legal conclusion, I said evenly. Not an emotional one. She didn't respond. I pulled the door, closed behind me. This time, I heard the lock click. 6:11 p.m. The elevator ride down felt longer. In the lobby, I stepped outside and inhaled the early evening air. No shaking hands, no raised voice, just sequence. I drove 3 blocks to a hotel I knew had visible exterior cameras above the entrance. I parked directly beneath one. Photograph. Lobby wide angle, camera dome visible in frame. I approached the front desk. Checking in, the clerk asked, Yes. Single room? Yes. He slid the form toward me. I filled it out neatly. Would you like an email receipt? He asked. And a printed one, I replied. He nodded and handed me both. I checked the timestamp at the top of the printed receipt. 6:18 p.m. I folded it carefully and placed it inside my document envelope. Took one last look at the time. Timestamp. 6:18 p.m. Chapter 3. Silence and Preparation. The hotel room was quiet in a way apartments never are. No refrigerator hum from a shared wall. No footsteps from upstairs neighbors. No elevator chime bleeding faintly through drywall. Just steady, insulated silence. Room 814. I locked the door behind me, flipped the latch, and stood still for a moment, listening to nothing. The air conditioner clicked on softly. That was it. I set my suitcase on the luggage rack, but didn't unpack. Instead, I cleared the small round table by the window, moved the complimentary coffee kit aside, slid the laminated room service menu to the desk. Then I unzipped the document envelope I had packed. Marriage certificate, lease agreement, joint bank statements, insurance policy, utility bills in both names. I laid them out in straight lines, edges aligned. Organization is control. I sat down. 6:27 p.m. The bedside lamp cast a clean circle of light across the table. I pulled out my laptop and opened a blank document. Title: Current Position Review. No adjectives. No accusations. Just structure. I began typing bullet points. Married. Legally valid. No separation filed prior to today. Primary residence. Joint lease. Utilities. Joint responsibility. No formal eviction notice served. Divorce documents. Unsigned by court. No filing confirmation. I paused and leaned back slightly. Her voice replayed in fragments. You don't belong here anymore. I inherited millions. Pack your things. Statements delivered like verdicts. But verdicts require jurisdiction. I opened our joint banking app. Balances unchanged. No sudden deposits visible. No 7-figure transfers. No pending transactions reflecting life-altering wealth. Interesting. I made another note. No visible distribution to joint accounts as of 6:32 p.m. I closed the banking app and opened our lease agreement. Term length. Both signatures present. No clause allowing unilateral removal without notice. No emergency buyout clause triggered by inheritance. I reread the termination section slowly. 30 days written notice required. Delivered formally. Not verbally. Not theatrically. Formally. I typed again. Lease protections intact. I leaned forward, elbows on the table, fingers interlocked. Emotion tried to push in at the edges, anger, humiliation, disbelief, but I kept it outside the room. Emotion cloud sequence. At 6:41 p.m., my phone buzzed. A message from her. Have you left yet? I looked at it without opening the thread. Screenshot. Saved. Uploaded. No response. Silence is information. I reached for the marriage certificate and studied it like it belonged to someone else. Date. Location. Witness signatures. There was a time when that paper felt like permanence. Now it felt like a contract under review. At 6:48 p.m., I picked up my phone and scrolled to a contact I hadn't used in years. Martin Hale, attorney. We had met once at a networking event. Exchanged cards. Had coffee a year later when a minor contract issue came up at work. I remembered him as measured, precise. I pressed call. It rang 4 times. Martin Hale, he answered. Martin, this is, I remember, he said. You don't call casually. What happened? Direct. Efficient. I need to review my position, I said. There was no tremor in my voice. No dramatic pause. Just this sentence. Regarding, he asked. My wife informed me today she inherited a significant estate. She's asked me to vacate our shared apartment and presented and signed divorce papers. Silence on his end for a moment. Not shocked silence, but processing silence. Were the papers filed? He asked. No court stamp. No case number. Did you sign? Yes. Under duress? No, another small pause. Did you receive formal notice to vacate? No. Is the property jointly owned? Leased. Both names. He hummed quietly. And the inheritance, do you know the structure? Not yet. Trust? Direct transfer? Probate? I assume probate. Assume. She said cleared. That was finalized. Cleared and finalized are not legal terms, he said calmly. They're conversational. I nodded to myself. Understood. He shifted tone slightly. Has probate closed? The question landed differently than the others. Closed. Not announced. Not celebrated. Closed. I stared at the wall across from me. I don't think so, I said slowly. Do you know if the estate has been distributed formally? No. Do you know if assets have transferred in her name legally, free of restriction? I don't. He let that sit. Then we start there, he said. I leaned forward again. What does that mean? It means inheritance is rarely instantaneous. There's administration, oversight, conditions, especially with large estates. I felt something shift, not relief, not hope, just recalibration. If probate is still open, he continued, then assets may not legally be fully hers to dispose of. It depends on jurisdiction and the structure of the estate. Dispose of. The word echoed. She's acting as if it's immediate, I said. Many people do, he replied. That doesn't make it so. I glanced at the documents spread across the table. What's my immediate exposure? I asked. Minimal, from what you've described, he said. You vacated voluntarily? Yes. Good. That prevents escalation tonight. Next step is information gathering, not confrontation. Agreed. Do not argue with her. Do not threaten. Do not speculate. Document everything. I assumed you would. A faint hint of approval in his voice. I'll need details, he continued. Estate name. Executor. Probate court. Timeline. Until we know whether probate has closed, everything else is noise. Noise. I looked down at my phone again. Another message had come through. Don't try anything. I flipped it face down. Send me copies of what you have, Martin said. Marriage certificate. Lease. Divorce draft. Any communication. I will. And one more thing, he added. Yes. Do not underestimate how quickly people overshare when they think they've won. That almost made me smile. I won't. We ended the call at 7:02 p.m. I placed the phone carefully on the table, opened my laptop, created a folder titled Estate Preliminary Review, attached scanned photos of the divorce papers, attached screenshots of her messages, attached lease and marriage certificate. I typed a final line in my document. Pending verification. Probate status. I sat back in the chair and allowed the silence of the hotel room to return. Air conditioner humming. Distant elevator dinged down the hall. My reflection faintly visible in the darkened window. Everything had felt abrupt at 2:41 p.m. Explosive. Irreversible. Now it felt procedural. Structured. Conditional. I leaned forward and typed one more sentence beneath the others. If probate wasn't closed, then she didn't own anything yet. Chapter 4, Probate Day. The next morning felt colder than it should have. Not in temperature, just in clarity. I arrived 10 minutes early. The probate office sat inside a government building that hadn't been renovated since efficiency replaced aesthetics. Fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead. Beige walls, beige tile, beige chairs bolted to the floor in straight rows like patience was mandatory. A digital board displayed case numbers in red LED. Paperwork moved here, not emotion. She was already there, standing near the reception window, dressed sharper than usual, structured blazer, hair pulled tight, a leather folder tucked under her arm like she was attending a board meeting. When she saw me, her chin lifted slightly. "I didn't think you'd show," she said. "I said I would. You didn't have to." "I know." A clerk behind the glass slid a clipboard toward her. "Sign here to confirm attendance." She signed quickly. Confident stroke. I signed beneath her name. The clerk glanced at the page. Both parties present. Good. Parties. Not winner and loser. Not beneficiary and obstacle. Just parties. We were directed down a narrow hallway toward conference room C. The door was half open. Inside, a rectangular table. 3 chairs on one side, 2 on the other. Stacks of files arranged neatly near a woman in her late 50s with steel gray hair and reading glasses balanced low on her nose. She looked up as we entered. "Good morning," she said. "I'm Eleanor Price, acting executor for the estate." Her tone was calm, experienced. She gestured for us to sit. My wife chose the chair closest to Eleanor. I took the one beside her. Eleanor opened a thick file and flipped to a marked tab. "Before we begin," she said, "I want to clarify the purpose of today's meeting. This is an administrative review. No assets are being transferred in this room." My wife nodded impatiently. "Yes, I understand." Eleanor's eyes moved to her over the top of her glasses. "Understanding is good. Documentation is better." A subtle correction. Eleanor continued. "The estate in question is valid. The inheritance exists." My wife's shoulders straightened slightly. But Eleanor added, turning a page, "Distribution is conditional." The word hung in the air longer than it should have. My wife blinked once. "What do you mean conditional?" she asked. Eleanor folded her hands neatly. "During the administration period, estate assets are restricted." She slid a summary sheet across the table. "Key clauses," she said evenly. She began reading from a page. "No disposal of estate property during administration." My wife's fingers tightened slightly around her folder. "No displacement of marital occupants without legal process." Her gaze flicked toward me briefly. "Financial activity monitored." She shifted in her seat. "Spousal status acknowledged during probate review." Silence followed that last line. My wife leaned forward. "I'm the sole beneficiary." "Yes," Eleanor said calmly. "Upon completion of administration." "Which you said was finalized," my wife replied quickly. "I said the inheritance is valid," Eleanor corrected. "Administration is ongoing." My wife's jaw flexed. "I was told it cleared." "Cleared for review," Eleanor said. "Not cleared for unrestricted execution." Execution. Authority had edges here. My wife looked at me as if expecting some reaction. I gave none. Eleanor turned another page. "There are compliance safeguards in place due to the size of the estate and the nature of the assets involved." "What safeguards?" my wife asked. "Asset freeze on real property transfers until final authorization." My wife inhaled sharply but tried to disguise it as a shift in posture. "Liquid accounts accessible?" she asked quickly. "Within approved parameters." "What does that mean?" "It means monitored." Her voice had lost a degree of brightness. Eleanor closed the file gently and looked at both of us. "There is one additional administrative note." My wife nodded, tried to regain momentum. "Yes." Eleanor adjusted her glasses and read from the document. "You are listed as an administrative observer to ensure compliance." The sentence settled heavily across the table. My wife didn't react at first. It took half a second to register. Then she turned to me fully. "What?" she said. Eleanor clarified. "Given the marital status at the time of death and the shared residence arrangement, the estate requires transparency oversight until administration concludes." My wife's composure fractured, not dramatically, but visibly. "That makes no sense," she said. "He has nothing to do with this. He is legally connected to you." Eleanor replied evenly, which connects him to potential exposure. I'm not exposing anything, my wife snapped. That is precisely what administrative safeguards are designed to prevent, Eleanor said calmly. My wife leaned back, crossing her arms. A defensive posture now, not victorious. So what exactly does observer mean? She demanded. It means, Eleanor explained, that he is entitled to receive notification of major estate actions during the administration period. It ensures compliance with court directives. My wife laughed once, but it was hollow. So he gets to monitor me? He receives oversight, transparency, Eleanor corrected. That's absurd. It's standard. My wife's eyes flickered again toward me, searching for irritation, triumph, anything she could latch onto. I remained still. Eleanor continued. Until probate closes, no estate property may be sold, transferred, or encumbered without explicit authorization. My wife's lips parted slightly. And no residential displacement actions may be executed without formal legal process. That line landed harder. She swallowed. Meaning what? She asked, though she already knew. Meaning, Eleanor said carefully, marital occupants retain protection during administration. Silence expanded in the room. Fluorescent lights hummed faintly above us. My wife's earlier posture, the lifted chin, the steady breath, had shifted into something narrower. Controlled, but unsettled. You told me it was mine, she said quietly. It will be, Eleanor replied. Upon completion. When? Upon completion. The repetition wasn't accidental. My wife opened her folder quickly and shuffled papers inside it, as if looking for something to contradict what she'd just heard. There must be some mistake, she muttered. There is no mistake, Eleanor said gently. This is procedural. Procedural. The word I understood. The word she hadn't expected. My wife looked at me again. This time not with superiority. With calculation. The confidence from yesterday, the triumphant phone call, the staged papers, the unlocked door, felt distant in this beige room. Authority had structure here, and structure was not hers. Eleanor began outlining timelines. Estimated weeks. Required disclosures. Documentation checkpoints. Each sentence added weight. Each clause added friction. By the time she finished, my wife was no longer leaning forward. She was sitting back, arms no longer crossed, hands resting flat on the table. Processing. Trying to reconcile the version of events she had celebrated with the version written in legal language. Eleanor closed the file decisively. We will reconvene after the next compliance review, she said. Until then, no unilateral actions are authorized. My wife nodded once, but the movement lacked conviction. We stood. Chairs scraped softly against tile. As we walked out into the fluorescent hallway again, she didn't speak immediately. Her steps were slightly slower now. Measured. Outside the building, morning light felt harsher than before. She stopped near the entrance. This doesn't change anything, she said quickly. It changes process, I replied. She looked away. For the first time since 2:41 p.m. the previous day, her certainty wavered. Not shattered. Not collapsed. Just cracked. Chapter closes with her first visible crack in confidence. Chapter 5, the unauthorized listing. I found out by accident. Or maybe not accident. Maybe inevitability. It was 11:12 a.m. when my phone buzzed with a notification from a real estate app one hadn't opened in months. I had once saved a handful of properties out of idle curiosity, market comparisons, neighborhood trends, hypothetical upgrades. The alert read, New listing, 1847 Hawthorne Avenue. The address felt familiar. Too familiar. I opened it. The photos loaded one by one. White colonial exterior. Black shutters. Brick walkway. The distinctive oak tree near the driveway with a slight lean to the left. I had seen that house once in passing during a holiday gathering years ago. It belonged to the estate she had just inherited. Or, more accurately, the estate still under administration. I scrolled down. Listed. Yesterday, for 06 p.m. Price. Aggressively positioned below market for fast transaction. Description. Clean title. Immediate transfer available. Motivated seller. Immediate transfer. Clean title. My jaw tightened slightly. I took screenshots of the entire listing. Every image, every description line, the agent's name, brokerage logo, MLS number. Saved. Uploaded. Then I zoomed into the listing details. Status. Under contract, accepting backup offers. That was fast. I clicked the agent profile. Local brokerage. Mid-sized firm. Established reputation. Not reckless amateurs. Which meant someone had assured them the property was ready. I opened the notes file. New heading. Unauthorized listing. Hawthorne Avenue timestamp. 11:16 a.m. Then I called Martin. He answered on the second ring. You sound early, he said. I found something. I replied. I walked him through it. The listing. The description. The immediate transfer language. He was silent for a moment. When was it listed? He asked. Yesterday afternoon. After the probate meeting? Yes. Status. Under contract. That changes breathing slightly. Not panic. Calculation. Do you have proof of active probate restrictions? He asked. Yes. Good. Send everything. I forwarded the screenshots immediately. While waiting, I refreshed the listing again. The price. The wording. And then I saw it, buried in the agent remarks section. Buyer has submitted cash deposit for expedited closing. Cash deposit. My phone buzzed again. An email from Martin. Subject. Draft. Brokerage notice. I opened it. Formal. Precise. It stated that the estate property remained under active probate administration and that no transfer authority had been granted. It cited statutory restrictions on asset disposal during probate. It requested immediate suspension of listing and full documentation of any deposit received. No accusations. Just exposure. Send it, Martin said when I called back. You're sure? Yes. If a deposit was accepted without authority, the brokerage needs to know immediately. I hesitated for half a second. Then I sent it. CC'd the brokerage compliance department email listed on their website. CC'd the agent directly. Attached proof of probate status. Then I sat back. At 11:48 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. This is Daniel Reeves with Fairmont Realty. A voice said, controlled but tight. We received your notice. Yes, I replied. There appears to be some confusion. I don't believe there is, I said calmly. He inhaled slowly. Our client assured us she had clear authority to sell. Authority during probate is conditional. We were told probate had closed. It hasn't. Silence. Paper shuffling on his end. Are you in a position to provide documentation? He asked. I already have. We'll need to review internally. I recommend you do that quickly, I said. You're currently marketing restricted property. His tone shifted subtly. Less defensive. More cautious. Was a deposit received? I asked. There was a brief pause. Yes. How much? I can't disclose that. You may want to. Another pause. We'll be contacting the seller, he said carefully. Please do. The call ended. At 12:07 p.m., the listing status changed. From under contract to temporarily off market. I refreshed twice to be certain. Screenshot. Saved. Uploaded. At 12:19 p.m., my phone buzzed again. This time her name. I didn't answer. The call stopped. Immediately followed by a text. Why are you contacting brokers? I read it without responding. Another message. What did you say to them? Then, why are you doing this? I placed the phone face down. Waited. Another message came in. You're embarrassing me. I imagined the scene. The brokerage calling her. Asking about probate documentation. Requesting authority letters. Questioning representations made. Another vibration. You're sabotaging my future. The tone had shifted from triumph to accusation. I did not reply. Instead, I forwarded every message to Martin. Subject. Seller reaction. Hawthorne. At 12:41 p.m., an email from the brokerage arrived. Subject. Immediate review initiated. The body was careful, neutral. They confirmed receipt of notice regarding probate restrictions. They stated the listing was frozen pending verification. They requested written confirmation from the seller's estate representative. Internal review initiated. At 1:02 p.m., my phone rang again. Unknown number. I answered. This is Michael Tran, the voice said, sharp and impatient. I was told you're disputing a property I placed a deposit on. The buyer. I'm not disputing, I replied calmly. I'm clarifying. Clarifying what? He snapped. I wired funds yesterday. Were you informed the property is under active probate? Silence. No, he said slowly. It is. That's not what I was told. I can provide documentation. His breathing shifted, anger mixing with concern. So I can't close? Not without court authorization. A beat. Are you telling me my deposit is at risk? I'm telling you the property cannot legally transfer at this time. There was a long pause, then controlled and cold. I'll be speaking with my attorney. That's advisable. He hung up. I documented the call immediately. 1:09 p.m., buyer contact. Express concern. Unaware of probate status. At 1:26 p.m., her messages resumed. Call me. You have no right. This has nothing to do with you. I forwarded each one. No response. At 2:03 p.m., another email from the brokerage. Listing officially withdrawn pending compliance confirmation. They requested refund instructions for the deposit. Refund. The word carried weight. At 2:11 p.m., my phone rang again. This time she didn't speak immediately when I answered. Her breathing was uneven. What did you do? She asked quietly. I notified them of probate status. You blindsided me. I corrected a representation. I had a buyer, she snapped. You had restrictions. You're jealous, she said suddenly. That's what this is. No, you couldn't stand that I moved fast. I don't move fast, I said evenly. I move correctly. She exhaled sharply. This is harassment. No silence. Then, softer, more strained. You just cost me everything. No, I replied. Process did. She hung up. Within hours, the listing had vanished. The buyer had lawyered up. The brokerage had frozen activity. And she was no longer speaking like someone who had absolute authority. Her final message of the afternoon came at 3:17 p.m. You'll regret this. I didn't respond. I forwarded everything to counsel. Chapter 6, Escalation. The shift didn't happen gradually. It snapped. At 4:02 p.m., my phone lit up with a PDF attachment from an unfamiliar email address. Subject line: Formal notice of interference. I opened it. The document looked official at first glance. Bold header, legal terminology, paragraphs formatted in justified alignment. But the details unraveled quickly. No law firm letterhead. No bar number. No contact information beyond a generic Gmail address. The signature line read only. Legal representative. I read the first paragraph carefully. You are hereby ordered to cease all interference in the lawful sale of estate property or face immediate legal consequences. Ordered. By whom? I zoomed in on the formatting. Misaligned margins. Inconsistent font sizes. No case reference. Theater again. I saved the file. Forwarded it to Martin with a single line. Authenticity questionable. He replied 3 minutes later. Not filed. Not enforceable. Do not respond. At 4:11 p.m., a voice note arrived from her. I didn't play it immediately. Instead, I screenshot the notification. Saved. Uploaded. Then I listened. Her voice was strained. Not crying. Not calm. Sharp and rushed. You need to stop. You are interfering with a legitimate transaction. I have every right to sell my property. You're jealous. That's what this is. You can't stand that I finally have something of my own. I stopped the audio before it ended. There was nothing in her tone resembling certainty anymore. Just acceleration. At 4:18 p.m., another message. A long paragraph. I spoke to someone, and they said you're trying to create leverage to get money out of this. That's not happening. You're not entitled to anything from this estate. Stop pretending you are. I read it once, then archived it. No response. At 4:26 p.m., a mutual friend texted. Daniel, not the one from work. The other one. Hey man, is everything okay? She said you're trying to block her inheritance? I stared at the message for a moment. There it was. The rewrite. I typed carefully. Probate is active. Assets restricted. Clarifying compliance. That's all. He replied with a simple, oh, that's not how she explained it. Of course it wasn't. At 4:39 p.m., another voice note from her. This one louder. You're telling people I can't sell my own house. You're making me look incompetent. Do you know how humiliating that is? I paused the playback. Humiliation. That word again. She had staged humiliation at the dining table. Now she felt it. The buyer emailed at 5:02 p.m. Subject: deposit return confirmation. Short: direct. He demanded written assurance that his deposit would be refunded immediately. He attached a draft letter from his attorney citing misrepresentation. The language was firm. Potential fraud exposure. I forwarded it to Martin. He called me within minutes. The buyer is escalating, he said. I expected that. Good. Because the brokerage is now requesting written clarification from her counsel. She has counsel, not formally retained, from what I can see, but she's been consulting. Consulting, I repeated, which means someone likely advised her without full documentation. I glanced at my phone as another message from her arrived. You're contacting buyers now? Followed immediately by, this is harassment. Then, you're trying to steal from me. The accusations were cycling faster now. Interfering. Jealous. Stealing. I didn't respond. Instead, I organized the messages chronologically and sent them to Martin. At 5:27 p.m., he sent back 2 drafts. One titled, Cease and Desist, Harassment and False Claims. The other, Documentation Request, Authority to Dispose of Estate Property. Attached beneath them was a prepared but unfiled document labeled, No Contact Order Draft. Do we file? I asked when he called. Not yet, he said. Preparation is leverage. Filing is escalation. And the cease and desist. We send it if the behavior continues. I looked at my phone again. Another paragraph from her. You've always been controlling. Now you're trying to control this too. You can't stand losing. Losing. I typed nothing. At 6:03 p.m., the brokerage compliance department sent a formal letter. They were conducting an internal review regarding representations made about the property's probate status. They required written authorization from the executor, confirmation of probate closure, verification of seller authority. Without it, no transaction would proceed. They copied her email address. They copied mine. Transparency had weight. At 6:17 p.m., she called again. I let it ring. Then it rang again and again. Finally, a text. Answer me. I didn't. Silence stretches people. At 6:32 p.m., another mutual acquaintance reached out. She says you're trying to take half her inheritance. Is that true? I replied once. No, I'm ensuring legal compliance during probate. No elaboration. No emotion. Facts only. At 7:04 p.m., her tone shifted again. The message was shorter. Please just stop. Then, seconds later, you're ruining everything. I forwarded both. Martin responded with one line. Continue not responding. At 7:18 p.m., an email arrived from an attorney's office, different from the fake PDF earlier. Subject: Inquiry regarding estate property representation. The wording was cautious. They stated they had been approached for consultation and were reviewing documentation before proceeding. Her attorney had become cautious. Good. At 7:26 p.m., another voice note from her. This one quieter. You're enjoying this, she said. That's the worst part. You're enjoying watching me struggle. I listened to the full 32 seconds, then deleted it from my phone, but not before saving a copy to the cloud. I wasn't enjoying anything. I was maintaining position. At 8:02 p.m., Martin called one last time. We're ready to send the cease and desist if needed, he said. But so far, your silence is working. I know. Escalation thrives on reaction. I know. There was a brief pause. Remember, he added, silence is leverage. I looked at the messages stacked in my inbox. The accusations, the rewrites, the panic disguised as outrage. I set the phone face down and said nothing. Silence is leverage. Chapter 7, 24 hours later. 2:40 p.m. I was watching the clock. Not obsessively, not nervously, just aware. The second hand on my phone's digital display shifted forward with mechanical indifference. The hotel room was quiet again, blinds half drawn, afternoon light cutting a clean line across the desk where my documents were stacked in deliberate order. At 2:41 p.m., Exactly 24 hours later, the timestamp that started everything returned. Yesterday, at this minute, she had declared victory. Today, everything had shifted. My email refreshed automatically. A new message appeared from Fairmont Realty. Subject: listing withdrawal confirmation, 1847 Hawthorne Avenue. I opened it. Formal language. Polite tone. Final. The property had been officially withdrawn from the market pending probate clearance. The brokerage cited material discrepancies in authority representation and confirmed that no further marketing efforts would occur without documented executor approval. Officially pulled. I took a screenshot, saved it, forwarded it to Martin. Seconds later, another email came in, this one from the buyer's attorney. Subject: demand for immediate refund, estate property. The body was blunt. If the deposit was not returned within 5 business days, legal remedies would be pursued against both the seller and brokerage for misrepresentation and potential fraud exposure. No emotional language. Just risk. I leaned back slightly in my chair. Process moving forward. At 2:44 p.m., my phone buzzed again. This time from the probate office. Not Eleanor directly, but an administrative clerk. Subject: compliance notation filed. The message was brief. Due to recent attempted unauthorized property disposition, a compliance notation had been entered into the estate file, pending further review. I read it twice. Compliance notation. Not accusation. Not penalty, but a flag. Permanent enough to matter. I forwarded it to Martin. He replied almost immediately. That's significant. I knew. At 2:49 p.m., another email arrived, this one from a law office that had been consulting her the previous day. Subject: withdrawal of representation, property matter. Short: professional. They stated that due to unresolved probate authority concerns, they would not be proceeding with representation in relation to the attempted sale. Her lawyer had withdrawn for the property matter. I checked the time again. 2:52 p.m. 24 hours earlier, she had told me to pack my things. Now, in less than half an hour, 4 formal shifts had occurred. Listing withdrawn. Buyer escalating. Probate compliance flagged. Attorney withdrawing. Noise collapsing into paperwork. At 3:01 p.m., my phone rang. Her name. I let it ring once. Twice. 3 times. Then I answered. I didn't say hello immediately. I waited for her to speak. She didn't. For a few seconds, all I heard was breathing. Uneven. Wet. Are you there? She finally said. Yes. Her voice was unrecognizable from the one that had called me 24 hours earlier. No triumph. No edge. Just strain. They pulled it, she said. I know. How do you know? It's public. Silence. They're refunding the deposit, she continued, voice cracking. The buyer's threatening to sue. I didn't respond. In probate, she stopped to inhale sharply. They filed something, a compliance notation, I said evenly. Another silence. How do you know that? She asked. I received notices. She let out a small, frustrated sound that bordered on a sob. My lawyer won't take the property case, she said quietly. He said it's premature. Premature. That was one word for it. I thought once I had the money, everything would make sense. The sentence didn't sound rehearsed. It sounded small. I looked at the clock again. 3:05 p.m. Money doesn't explain behavior, I said calmly. It reveals it. She didn't argue, didn't push back. The silence on the line stretched longer this time. Then her voice broke fully. I didn't think it would get this complicated. It was always complicated. No, she said quickly. I mean, you didn't fight. You didn't yell. You just, she exhaled sharply. You just moved things. I followed process. You made me look reckless. You moved recklessly. Another pause. I thought probate was done, she whispered. You assumed. I trusted what I was told. By who? She didn't answer that. Instead, her tone shifted again, softer now. Can you just fix this? There it was. Not an accusation. Not a threat. A request. For what? I asked. For the buyer. For the notation. For she faltered. For everything. Several seconds passed. Long enough for her breathing to fill the space. Long enough for her to understand the silence wasn't accidental. I don't even know what to do now, she said. That's why attorneys exist. I don't have one for this anymore. Find one. You could just tell them it was a misunderstanding. It wasn't. It could be, she insisted weakly. If you just know the word wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. She inhaled sharply again. So that's it? She asked. You attempted to sell restricted property. I didn't know. You didn't verify. Her voice trembled. I thought once I had the money, I'd finally be free. Free from what? She didn't answer. Another stretch of silence. This one heavier. I need help, she said finally. The words came out quietly. Not defiant. Not strategic. Just tired. I didn't speak immediately. I let the silence sit there between us. Not as punishment, as clarity. The air conditioner in my hotel room clicked on again. A steady hum underlined the moment. She sniffed softly. Please, she added. I looked at the timestamp on my phone again. 3:12 p.m. 24 hours and 31 minutes since she told me to leave. Then I spoke. Talk to your attorney. There was a small, defeated exhale on the other end. I don't know if I can afford another one, she muttered. You inherited millions. That line landed without sarcasm. Just fact. She didn't respond. The silence stretched one final time. Then the line clicked. Call ended. Chapter 8. The apartment returned. The email from my attorney arrived at 9:12 a.m. Client may retrieve personal property today at 3:00 p.m. Escort arranged. No direct interference expected. Maintain documentation. Efficient. Clean. Controlled. Not like the last time I'd stood in front of that apartment door. That day, I'd been ordered out. Today, I was returning properly. At 2:58 p.m., I stood in the hallway outside Unit 14B. The building manager, Mr. Alvarez, waited beside me with a clipboard tucked under his arm. Neutral expression. Professional distance. He'd known us as the stable couple. That illusion had expired. You're just retrieving personal effects? He asked quietly. Yes. No furniture disputes? No, he nodded once. At exactly 3:00 p.m., he knocked. Not aggressively. Just official. The door opened slower than I expected. She stood there. Different. Not defeated, but drained. Her hair wasn't styled. No sharp lipstick. No armor. The posture that had filled the doorway 24 hours ago was gone. The door was locked now. Not theatrically open like before. Locked. Controlled. The stage pen that had been placed on the dining table like a trophy that first day gone. The energy had shifted. No performance. No audience. Just reality. Mr. Alvarez cleared his throat lightly. This is a supervised retrieval, he said. I'll remain in the common area. She stepped aside without argument. Come in, she said quietly. No hostility. No sarcasm. Just space. I walked inside. The apartment felt smaller. Maybe because the illusion of power that once filled it had evaporated. The dining table was still there. Same with grain. Same centered chandelier above it. But it wasn't a stage anymore. It was just furniture. I set a medium-sized storage box on the floor near the hallway. I'll start in the bedroom, I said. She nodded once. No commentary. No challenge. Mr. Alvarez positioned himself near the entryway, giving distance but staying within view. I walked down the hallway slowly. Each step sounded louder than I remembered. The bedroom door was open. Half my closet space was empty now because I had taken what I needed the first day. What remained were smaller things. A leather watch box, old notebooks, 2 framed photos, the extra pair of dress shoes I hadn't bothered with during the rush. I moved methodically. No rushing. No hesitation. Each item folded carefully, placed deliberately. Behind me, I heard soft footsteps. She stood at the doorway, arms loosely crossed. Not defensive, just present. You didn't have to bring an escort, she said quietly. Yes, I did. She didn't argue. You think I would have caused a scene? I think structure prevents scenes. She absorbed that. The bed was neatly made, her side untouched. My pillow missing. I placed the watch box into the container, closed it gently. She shifted her weight. I wasn't trying to humiliate you, she said suddenly. I didn't turn around. You staged divorce papers on a dining table. Silence. I thought you'd fight, she admitted. For what? For me. That made me pause. I turned slightly, meeting her eyes for the first time since entering. You already decided, I said calmly. There was nothing to fight. Her jaw tightened, but not in anger. In regret. I moved to the dresser, opening the top drawer. Passport copy. A few old receipts. The cufflinks my father had given me. I picked them up carefully. Behind me, she spoke again. When the inheritance came through, everything felt urgent. Urgency doesn't override process. I know that now. I closed the drawer, carried the box back into the hallway. The dining table came into view again. That table, where she'd placed the divorce papers, where she told me to pack my things, where she believed authority came from a bank notification. Now it was bare. No pen, no documents, no performance, just polished wood reflecting afternoon light. I walked toward the small cabinet near the balcony doors and opened it. Inside were a few remaining personal files I'd left behind intentionally. Tax copies, insurance records, duplicates. I slid them into a folder. She stood near the kitchen now, watching, not intervening. "You're very calm," she said. "I've been calm. You weren't always." "No," I agreed. "But I learned." She looked down at the floor. The silence wasn't tense. It was hollow. I picked up the last framed photo from the shelf near the entryway. It was from 5 years ago. Beach trip. We were both smiling. Before money. Before pride. Before this. "You can leave that," she said softly. "I won't." I placed it face down in the box. Mr. Alvarez cleared his throat gently from the doorway. "Everything proceeding smoothly?" "Yes," I replied. She nodded. "Yes." I sealed the top of the box with packing tape I brought. Slowly. Clean edges. No rush. Then I walked back to the dining table. I let my fingers rest lightly on the surface. This was where she believed she had control, where she thought I would crumble. Instead, everything that followed had been paperwork. Process. Silence. I pulled the apartment key from my pocket. The spare. The one I'd kept separate from the ring she'd once given me. I placed it gently in the center of the table. No speech. No symbolism beyond the obvious. She looked at it, then at me. "That's it?" she asked. "Yes." "You're not going to say anything?" "What would you like me to say?" Her lips parted slightly, then closed. "I thought once I had the money," she began again, but stopped herself. I didn't fill the silence. She looked smaller standing in that space. Not because she'd lost power, because she'd misunderstood it. "I didn't think it would turn out like this," she said. "It didn't," I replied evenly. "It unfolded exactly like this." She swallowed. No screaming, no accusation, no rewriting, just acceptance hanging in the air like dust in sunlight. Mr. Alvarez stepped slightly forward. "If we're finished," "We're finished," I said. I lifted the box. It wasn't heavy, not physically. At the door, I paused, not dramatically, just long enough to look once more at the dining table. The same table where she staged her authority. Now empty, neutral, ordinary. I stepped into the hallway. Mr. Alvarez gave a small nod and pulled the door closed behind me. I heard the lock turn. Firm. Final. I didn't look back. And I left the key. Chapter 9. The Estate Property. The morning air was crisp as I drove toward the estate building. Sunlight caught the edges of the high-rises in the city's northern district, glinting off glass and steel, but the streets around the estate had a quieter, older rhythm. Brick facades, narrow sidewalks, small trees carefully trimmed. The neighborhood smelled faintly of coffee shops and morning traffic. I parked in the reserved lot for estate administrators and stepped out. The leather strap of my briefcase pressed lightly against my shoulder. Inside were the documentation packets, probate records, compliance notices, tenant agreements. Not weapons, not statements of anger, just paper, structure. The building itself stood solidly for stories, red brick, ivy climbing the northern wall. I had never been inside. She hadn't been here either, at least not in any official sense. To her, these properties were assets. To me, they were people's homes. I entered the lobby. The smell of old carpet and polished would fill the space. Mailboxes lined the left wall, names printed neatly. I moved toward the central hallway, listening to the faint echo of footsteps on the tiled floor. A soft voice stopped me before I reached the staircase. "Excuse me, are we being thrown out?" I turned to see an elderly woman standing by her door. Her hair was thin and gray, pulled into a tidy bun, hands wrinkled but firm, gripping a wooden cane. Her eyes were wide. Fear. Concern. The kind that comes from having lived decades in one place, only to suddenly wonder if it could vanish overnight. No, I said calmly, stepping closer. I lower my briefcase to the floor. No one is being displaced without process. She blinked, uncertainty still lingering. But the new owner, she inherited all this money. She could just... I raised a hand to interrupt gently. She could try, but there are rules, legal structures in place. You have rights. Your lease agreements remain valid. You will not be forced out. A tremor ran through her shoulders. Relief began to edge into her eyes, though she still clutched the cane like a lifeline. Are you sure? I am, I said. I opened my briefcase and retrieved a small stack of papers. Tenant agreements, notices, and a copy of the probate compliance directive. I handed them to her. See? Everything is documented. These protect you. If anyone tries to circumvent the rules, this paperwork is your shield. This is how order is maintained. She ran her fingers along the documents like a child discovering a hidden treasure. I never knew. I thought they could just know. I said softly, structure exists to prevent that. She exhaled slowly. I can stay. Yes, I replied, for as long as the law allows. No one can force you out arbitrarily. The estate may have changed hands, but you are still a tenant with rights. You are protected. Her shoulders relaxed. The tension in her face melted into a tentative smile. Thank you, she said. I was so afraid. Yesterday I heard, people talking. People always talk, I said. But talk doesn't change the law. Paperwork does. Process does. She nodded slowly, letting the weight of my words settle. I never met the new owner. I didn't know what to expect. That's understandable, I said. Many don't. But fear doesn't control outcomes. Procedure does. I watched her walk back into her apartment, carrying the documents carefully. Every step seemed lighter than before, relief replacing panic. As I moved down the hallway, I passed other doors. Names on mailboxes. Another tenant peered out, curious. I offered a small nod. A few murmured greetings returned. I gave another nod and continued. At the stairwell, I paused, looked down the narrow corridor toward the lobby. The building hummed quietly, not chaotic, not tense, not like her apartment the day she staged the divorce papers. Just ordinary life moving forward. I opened my briefcase again, reviewed the compliance checklists, property status reports, tenant protections. Each line reinforced the contrast. Her world was a theater of power, impulsive gestures, and unchecked assumptions. My world was methodical, calm, structured. Her inheritance had been weaponized in attempts to intimidate. My role used process to stabilize. I stopped at the top floor and looked out a window. The street below was waking. Children walking to school. Delivery trucks maneuvering carefully between parked cars. Life continuing. Unthreatened. I returned to the lobby slowly, making one last sweep. Doors locked. Notices posted. Tenants aware. Each apartment accounted for. Not a hint of the chaos that had accompanied her previous claims of ownership. Back at the entrance, I paused, turned to the building once more. It stood solid, order maintained, authority respected, but not abused. People safe in their homes, not because of loud declarations, but because of rules, structure, and careful documentation. A security guard walked past, tipping his cap. All good, sir. All good, I said. The sun shone more brightly now, the shadows shifting across the sidewalk. I gathered my briefcase, took one final look at the building, one last glance at the tenant's windows. The elderly woman stood briefly at her door, waving. I waved back. This scene, the quiet relief on her face, the stability in the building, the unbroken order of occupancy, reinforced the moral contrast I had felt from the beginning. She had used inheritance to intimidate, to attempt control, to create fear where none should exist. I had used structure to stabilize, to reassure, to ensure that life, rules, and process held firm against impulsive attempts at domination. The estate remained intact. Order restored. Chapter 10, Final Message. The hotel room was quiet. Late afternoon sun slanted through the blinds, casting lines across the floor like prison bars or perhaps the bars of control itself. Control she had believed she possessed, control she had tried to wield recklessly. I sat at the desk, my laptop open but untouched, my phone resting beside it. Documents neatly stacked to one side. Notes chronologically organized. Every detail of the past 24 hours recorded, saved, and backed up. Then my phone buzzed. A single vibration, a quiet intrusion into the calm of my space. Her name on the screen. I didn't pick up immediately. Didn't need to. The moment had been anticipated. I read the message. Good luck. No flourish. No plea. No accusation. Just the words. Flat. Neutral. Or perhaps the residue of someone who had learned, too late, that triumph without process is fragile. I stared at it for a long moment. Let the words linger. Let the weight of the past 24 hours settle into them. Then I typed a reply. Carefully. Slowly. Measured. Good luck. I didn't add anything else. No gloating. No sarcasm. No reminders. Nothing to inflame. Nothing to bait. Before sending, I read it over. Calm. Neutral. Exact. Send. The message left. Delivered. Seen. A digital acknowledgement of parity. Of closure. I blocked her. Not out of anger. Not out of spite. But to finalize the boundary. To prevent impulsive theatrics from finding a stage. To preserve the calm I had cultivated through process. I sat back. Leaned in my chair. The afternoon light now softer, almost golden. Reflections began to surface, clear and deliberate. I never shouted. Never begged. Never chased. I did not raise my voice. I did not attempt to reclaim imagined authority. I did not try to explain, convince, or plead. She had believed that money was power. That inheritance instantly equaled dominion. That speed and audacity could override law, order, and human decency. The lesson was simple, but hard-learned through her mistakes. Luck is not ownership. A sudden windfall does not grant right to disregard process, boundaries, or legality. Speed creates liability. Acting faster than the rules allow exposes the reckless to scrutiny, to legal exposure, to documentation that records every misstep. Paper outlasts emotion. Contracts, notices, compliance filings, they persist long after anger, mockery, or triumph has dissipated. Calm is power. Control of oneself. Control of response. Control of procedure. These are stronger than any flash of pride or rush of money. Silence is not surrender. Choosing not to react immediately, not to escalate theatrically, does not signal weakness. It signals awareness and preparation. I reached for the notes from the previous day. Reopen the timeline. 2:41 p.m., her call. Sharp, triumphant, demanding. Then the next day, 2:41 p.m., the same timestamp marking the completion of her unraveling. Every step measured, every escalation anticipated, every legal step documented. I thought about her attempts to intimidate, to rush, to rewrite reality in her favor. Each text, each fake PDF, each voice note, a demonstration of energy without structure, noise without foundation. It had been exposed, corrected, and neutralized by quiet documentation and adherence to process. I reflected on the contrast. She had sought spectacle. I had maintained order. She had acted emotionally. I had acted methodically. She had expected immediate obedience or fear. I had only applied procedure, patience, and presence. The key insight crystallized. The world responds not to screams, not to threats, not to sudden wealth. It responds to rules, consistency, and calm authority. I reviewed the final messages again. The last word she sent. Simple, deflated, a muted acknowledgement of the collapse that had begun hours before. She no longer had a stage. She no longer had the performative thrill of apparent power. Only the cold, structured reality of legality and process remained. I could almost hear the echo of that first day. 2:41 p.m. Her triumphant call. Then the quiet unfolding of consequence. A chain reaction invisible to her arrogance. Visible only to those who respected the process. I picked up a pen, not to write, not to sign, not to stage anything, but to underline one final note in my journal. At 2:41 p.m., she thought she had won. By 2:41 p.m. the next day, the paperwork had already answered her. I leaned back, hands folded, eyes tracing the sunlight on the wall. The apartment she had staged was irrelevant now. The properties she had tried to sell unauthorized were documented and secured, the tenants reassured. Everything that could be corrected had been corrected. No spectacle, no revenge, no excess, just order restored. I exhaled, a small, quiet exhale, the weight of 24 hours of chaos settling into finality. The phone remained blocked, the documents secured, the estate intact. In that moment, I realized that this wasn't just about her or money or humiliation. It was about principles, about process, about ensuring that structure, calm, and legality hold their place even when someone tries to override them with noise, ambition, or arrogance. The light shifted again, longer shadows now stretching across the floor. Evening approaching. I closed the laptop, stood up, moved to the window, looked out at the city. People moving, cars passing, the ordinary rhythm of life continuing unthreatened. Her messages would end, her calls would stop, and the world, in its quiet impartiality, would continue. I smiled faintly, not at her, not at triumph, not at revenge, but at the lesson learned, the calm maintained, the order preserved. The finality was satisfying, not dramatic, not vengeful, just complete. No one screamed, no one cried out beyond necessity. No one claimed victory beyond reality. Luck is not ownership. Speed creates liability. Paper outlasts emotion. Calm is power. Silence is not surrender. I turned from the window, letting the words settle like dust in the quiet room. And with that, the chapter closed. At 2:41 p.m., she thought she had won. By 2:41 p.m. the next day, the paperwork had already answered her.